Hi and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2000 Infiniti. It's an i30. Customer complaint is they drive the vehicle and they hear a loud rattling noise in the right rear when they're hitting bumps. You don't hear it all the time, just when you're going over a very large pothole or bump in the road. I did drive it and the noise is unmistakable. You can hear it as clear as day. I lifted it up, as you can see, and as you probably can guess, I already know what the problem is. So let me bring you in there. I'm going to show you what the problem is, and then we're going to make a couple of phone calls, get some prices, call the customer, and see what they want to do. So let me bring you in there. I'll show you what the issue is. All right. This is the right rear. As you can see, the struts themselves are blown out. You can see it's leaking fluid. So the strut is actually shot. And as you can see, right here, the spring is broken right here. So, all right, let me make some phone calls, get some prices, and see what the customer wants to do. In this case here, I'm going to recommend quick struts because the spring is no good. The inside boot is shot, and of course the strut is no good. So we are going to go quick strut because that's going to be the best way the best and least expensive way to resolve it. So all right, let's make some phone calls and see what we're going to do. Hey, how you doing, Jim? Hey, 2000 Infiniti I30. Can I get a price on and availability on all four struts? The quick struts, actually. Okay. 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 All right, is that something you have in stock? You can get them? Okay. All right. Okay, let me just work out a number. I'll call a customer, and I'll call you right back. Thanks. Bye. We'll work out a number. We're going to call a customer, and we're going to see what we're going to do. We did call a customer. The customer wants to replace actually all four of the struts because there's a special going on right now with the Monroe struts. If you buy three, you get the fourth one free. So we are going to do all four of the struts. So let me get my gloves on and get out there. Let's get started. Okay. And there, you can see how the strut is leaking. So we'll need to get up into the trunk up in here to remove the top bolts. And then we're going to unbolt the bottom right underneath here. Before we do that, we're going to go to the front. And that is why we're going to be changing the front struts as well, because you can see where it's leaking right here. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to get some tools set up. We're going to come in here, we're going to remove this clip right here, which actually holds the brake line to the caliper. We're going to disconnect this 10mm bolt right here. We're going to air gun off these two nuts right here, pull these out, and then we're going to go under the hood and we're going to disconnect the upper part of the strut. So let me grab some tools and let's get started. Okay, before we get started, I just want to point out that we are going to be changing the entire strut assembly. We're going to change the strut, the bearing plate, and the spring as one complete assembly because we need to change the bellows inside, which is the dust boot that goes around the shaft of the strut. It's no good. But by the time you get the price of the strut and the boot kit and the bearing plate has got 180,000 miles on it anyway, the logical thing to do is to change the entire assembly, which is just what I'm going to do. So I just want to point this out. Do not for any reason take that screw out right there. You take that screw out and you'll probably be picking up your teeth off the ground because yeah, I shouldn't have said that, should I? Okay. I started. Under no circumstances do you want to take that screw out right there. You unscrew this and we're going to have a big problem. You will not be able to get this out of the car. When you disconnect up the top, you're just going to disconnect these three. I think they were 14 or 15mm bolts up top. and then the whole assembly comes out. So, all right, let's get in there. Let's get started. I'm going to give you an example of what tools you're going to need to do this job from start to finish. Now, on this particular job, let me put this down. Okay, as you know, most of my stuff I try to always do it by hand. Doing struts by hand is a little more difficult. I am going to use an air gun. As much as I tell you I don't like using air guns in my videos, I am going to use air guns to get this job apart and back together. So again, you can do it at home, but it's a little bit more work for me, so I am going to cheat and use my air gun. So let me bring you in now and show you what we're going to do and what tools we're going to need. All right, this is an example of what tools you're going to need. You're just going to need a 17mm wrench. You're going to need a ratchet with a 10mm socket, of course an extension. You're going to need a 19mm socket to air gun the nuts off. You're going to need a 14mm for the upper part of the strut, and we're also going to need a pair of vice grips to remove the bracket that actually holds the brake line in place, and of course I'm going to use an air gun too. So enough talking, let's get started. Okay. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take that clip out in the back right there that holds the brake line in place. You just get on here with a pair of vice grips and you just take the clip right out like that. If you can't get this out, for some reason it's stuck, you can get in there with a hammer and a chisel and you can just knock the clip out. Be careful, don't lose it. You're going to need to use this over again. All right, now we can take our brake line out like this. I just put that off to the side for now. Then we're going to remove this little 10mm bolt in the side right here. I'll bring you in there and show you what I mean. That little 10mm bolt right there, we're going to unscrew that so we can take this ABS sensor and relocate that off to the side. And then we're going to air gun out that nut, and we're going to hold these two 17mm right here. So that's what I'm going to do. Don't lose that screw, you're going to need that again also. Next thing I'm going to do is down right here, you see this ABS sensor, it's hooked in there, you just rock it back and forth and you pull this out like that. Then you can get on here with a wrench to hold it. Cover your ears. So now, okay, before I go any further now, we're going to take out the bolts. We're going to keep these. We have to reuse them again. And I just want to point this out to you. When you take this strut out, you have to be careful that you that you don't pull the inner tripod out of the axle. If you pull the tripod out, you're going to have a problem with it. So right now we're just going to be careful with this. Take the bolts out. We're just going to rock this out of here very little, just to get it out. And then we're going to put it over here. Now what I normally do is take a bungee cord and just pull the caliper, the knuckle, out of the way with that, so that you don't accidentally pull the axle. So that you don't accidentally pull the axle out of the transmission. All right, so keep that in there and just make it as tight as you possibly can. And that keeps the rotor in place so it doesn't come out. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go up top, and I'm going to take these bolts out up on the top that you see right up there. You see this, these bolts up here? I'm going by feel because I don't have my ladder yet there. This, and this, we're going to take those out, and we're going to lower the strut down. So let's do that. Take two of them totally off. So now we have two of them off. Now you can see the strut is much looser now. I'll get you back here so you can see. It's much looser now. Now, while we're up here, you're going to hold the strut up, and you can take the nut off on top that you left loose, and now we'll take the strut out of the car. And then you can take the entire assembly out. Whenever you get the new strut, also make sure you use the new bolts that came, the new nuts that came with it. And what you're going to do is you get your strut back into its opening right here. Make sure all of your wiring is out of the way. I am going to go up top to catch that. Now, just so we don't have any problems, we're going to put these bolts back through here to hold the strut. Let me catch the other nut up on top. We are going to tighten these up on top just a little bit. Now, I'm not going to tighten the top all the way down. I'm just going to snug them in with the air gun. Okay, and you know how I am with air guns. I always like to tighten the top bolts on top here by hand, just to make sure that they're tight enough. I don't want to snap it off with the air gun, but we're good up there. That's nice and tight. All right, we have our bolts caught in the strut. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the two nuts on the end right here. And we're going to tighten it up. That's nice and tight. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put that ABS cable back in where it came out, like that. Then we're going to take our 10mm bolt. We're going to reattach the ABS sensor. You're going to screw it in by hand, of course. And then we're going to tighten it up with the ratchet. And last but not least, we're going to reattach that brake line that we previously removed. Remember, you have that little horseshoe clamp. And we're just going to tap that in. Okay, that's it. One side's finished. All right, so I just want to go over with you one more time what I did. We put the brake line back through here. We reattached the ABS sensor right there. We tightened up that 10mm bolt right there. We held these two 17mm bolts, and we tightened up the 19mm bolts here. And up top right here, we tightened up all three of those bolts up top there. So this strut is done. We're now going to go to the other side, and we're going to repeat the process on the other side, and then we'll come right back and I'll show you how to do the backs. All right, just be careful that you don't pull the tripod out of the transmission in here, otherwise you'll be playing around to try to get a new axle back in there. All right, let me continue on the other side, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the backs. Okay, now we're in the back of the car, and what we're going to do is we're going to take out this bolt right down in here. The nut is actually up inside here. It's extremely rusty, so we're going to spray it with some penetrating oil. Okay, we're going to shoot this bottom bolt out down here first. Just so you know, this is a 17mm. Even when they're rusty, they come out pretty easy. Now the suspension is then loose, as you can see. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up inside the car, and we're going to disconnect the strut from up in the top where it goes up through here. It's in the trunk, so we're going to go up into the trunk first. And as you can see, we got to remove a lot of crap before we do anything. So let me take all this stuff out of here, and we'll come right back. Okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to take out this cover right here so we can gain access to the top of the strut. Okay. Don't lose that because you're going to need it. We'll just take this down just so we can gain access to the top of the strut. And you can see the strut down inside here. we need to take out those screws right there. So let me take those screws out, and I'll show you. It's a really tight fit in there. See that? Got to take those out of there. So let's unscrew them and we'll continue. All right, once you got these out, then we'll go down the bottom and we'll take that strut right out. And just take the strut out like this. We'll put our replacement back in. Line it up through the top here with the bolts. Okay, now we'll caught there. We'll get the bolts back on the top. Okay, let's catch the bolts on the top and we'll tighten them up now. Okay, I'm going to get those bolts caught right there. You can see that it looks like a pain in the rear end to get to. They are. So let me catch those bolts and we'll screw them in. That was a pain in the ass. And I'm not going to say a pain in the rear end, it was a pain in the ass. Alright, now that we've got the top tight, next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down on the bottom over here, and we're going to tighten up the last bolt. We're going to shoot this on with the air gun. And that's done. All right, so let's recap what we did here. We put this bolt back through the bottom right over here. We air gunned it in as tight as it can go. We put those two bolts in right there that you see in there. That one and the one that's a real pain in the rear end inside there, we tightened them up, and that's it, we're all done. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the strut on the other side, and we'll wrap this car up and get it out the door. All right, as always, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, send me an email or whatever. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody about anything. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.